The sky was painted in soft hues of dusk as Misty, the small, fragile kitten, wandered alone on the deserted street. Her fur, matted and dirty from days of hunger and fear, was a sad reflection of her reality. She had once been part of a family, but now, abandoned and lost, she was nothing more than a shadow of the joy she used to know. Her eyes, big and bright but filled with sadness, scanned her surroundings in search of something familiar. But there was only emptiness. She was alone. Her tiny body trembled, not just from the cold but from the fear of the unknown. Every sound around her sent her running, hoping to find safety, but there was nowhere to hide. She had no choice but to keep moving, searching for a way to survive in this cruel, unkind world. Each step was a painful reminder of the life she had lost, but Misty couldn't give up. Not yet. Misty continued her solitary trek, the cold wind biting at her exposed skin. She was unsure where she was heading, but each step felt like a faint hope, even if it led to nowhere. Her stomach growled in protest, the hunger a constant reminder of her loneliness. As the sun dipped lower, darkness crept in, leaving Misty even more vulnerable. She paused at the entrance of a small alleyway, her body trembling with exhaustion. The wind howled through the narrow space, making Misty shiver. She could smell something, faint, but it was food. Her instincts kicked in. She padded forward, drawn by the promise of sustenance. But as she neared the source of the scent, she froze, her heart pounding. She wasn't alone. Another animal, larger and more aggressive, stood before her. It growled low, its eyes filled with menace. Misty's heart raced as Rex took a step forward, growling in warning. She crouched down instinctively, her tail flicking in fear. This was no place for a small, defenseless creature like her. She needed to escape, to find safety. But, as she turned to run, Rex lunged forward, blocking her path. She scrambled back, her paws slipping on the wet ground. But there was no escape. Misty let out a small, frightened mewl, but Rex didn't relent. Her options dwindled. She couldn't outrun him, and she was too weak to fight. In that moment, Misty wondered if this was how her story would end. A scared kitten trapped by a cruel world. Just as Rex stepped forward, a loud noise from the street interrupted the tense moment. Rex paused, turning its attention to the source of the sound. Misty seized her chance. With a burst of energy, she darted past Rex, her heart racing in her chest. Rex barked in frustration, but Misty didn't stop. She raced down the alley, barely aware of the dark shapes looming around her. She could hear Rex's footsteps behind her, but Misty pushed herself harder, adrenaline coursing through her. She didn't stop running until she reached a small, hidden corner. Her tiny body collapsed onto the ground, panting. She was safe, for now. Misty's body trembled as she curled up in a tight ball in the hidden corner. The alley was quiet now, and the only sound was her ragged breathing. She had outrun the danger, but the fear still lingered. She longed for warmth, comfort, and safety, things she hadn't known for so long. She closed her eyes, trying to will herself into sleep, but every little sound made her jump. She didn't know how long she would survive this way. All she knew was that she couldn't give up. Not yet. Tomorrow, she would search again for food, for shelter, and maybe, just maybe, someone would take her in. Misty was cold and weak when a soft voice interrupted the silence of the alley. It wasn't a growl or a threatening bark. It was a warm, soothing sound. She turned her head and saw a woman, around 30 years old, kneeling in front of her. Her brown eyes were filled with compassion, and she had a gentle smile that didn't feel forced or patronizing. Misty remained still, too exhausted and wary to move, but the woman didn't seem to mind. With delicate hands, she slowly reached out, offering a small piece of food. Misty sniffed the air cautiously, her eyes never leaving the woman's face. There was no trickery here, only kindness. Slowly, cautiously, Misty took a hesitant step forward, her legs shaking. The woman continued to smile gently, her presence a stark contrast to the cold, lonely streets. With each step, Misty grew more confident. The woman didn't rush her, allowing the kitten to approach on her own terms. When Misty finally ate the food, it wasn't just the physical hunger she was satisfying. It was a deeper longing, the need for care, for connection. Sarah spoke softly as she watched her voice like a comforting melody. "You're safe now. No more fear," she whispered, though Misty could only understand the tone. The kindness in Sarah's voice seemed to reach deep into Misty, warming her heart even in the darkest of places. Sarah gently stroked Misty's head as the kitten finished her meal. The touch was so kind, so gentle, that Misty didn't pull away. For the first time in days, she felt safe. After eating, Misty finally felt the weight of exhaustion catch up with her. She tried to stand, but her legs were too weak. Sarah took notice and gently scooped her up, cradling her against her chest. The warmth of Sarah's body was comforting, and Misty relaxed, unable to resist the feeling of being held. Sarah spoke softly, her voice full of promise. "You'll be okay now. I'll take care of you." Misty nestled into Sarah's arms, the first semblance of safety she'd known in what felt like forever. The world around her faded away as the warmth from the woman enveloped her. Sarah walked slowly, her steps calm and steady, as she carried Misty toward the nearby shelter. Sarah entered a small building, the shelter, and immediately Misty felt a shift. The warmth from the shelter was inviting, and the soft buzz of a heater in the corner added to the comforting atmosphere. Sarah sat down on a cushioned chair and gently placed Misty on her lap. The kitten's eyes darted around the room, but everything was so different from the streets. There was safety here. A small group of animals in cages, all with stories of their own, glanced toward Misty, but none of them made a sound. Sarah smiled at the kitten, who was finally feeling the comfort of a soft, safe space. "This is your new home," Sarah said gently. Misty looked up at Sarah with wide eyes, her body relaxed for the first time in what seemed like forever. As Misty sat nestled in Sarah's lap, the gentle sounds of the shelter, the soft hum of voices, and the occasional rustling from the animals seemed to lull her into a peaceful trance. Sarah continued to stroke her fur softly. "You're not alone anymore, Misty," she whispered. Misty, the name sounded right, a name that gave her a new identity, a new life. Misty's eyes slowly closed as sleep overtook her. The warmth and safety of the shelter wrapped around her, and for the first time in a long while, Misty felt like she belonged. Her past struggles faded into the distance as she finally allowed herself the rest she had been yearning for. She was home now, and nothing would take that away. The following days felt like a dream for Misty. In the comfort of the shelter, her fur started to regain some semblance of softness, and her once weak body became stronger. Sarah had been kind and gentle, always offering food and warmth. But the feeling of security didn't last long. One afternoon, Sarah walked into the shelter with a look of concern on her face. A couple had come in, claiming to be interested in adopting Misty. Sarah hesitated. She had gotten attached to the kitten, and the thought of letting go was difficult. But Misty needed a home. A real home, not just a temporary place. The couple seemed friendly enough, so Sarah reluctantly agreed to let them take her. Misty, still unsure, was handed over with the same soft, careful touch. As Sarah watched them leave with Misty in their arms, a knot tightened in her stomach. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The next few days passed slowly, and Misty began to grow accustomed to her new home, a large house with an expansive garden. She was given food, toys, and a warm bed. Yet, something wasn't right. The couple was friendly at first, but their smiles felt forced, their gestures too controlled. Misty tried to explore the garden, but the gates were always locked, and she was kept within the house. There was a sense of loneliness here that she hadn't experienced before. The couple didn't understand her need for affection. They kept their distance, only occasionally petting her. One evening, when Misty was left alone in her room, she heard strange voices outside the door. The couple was arguing. The voices were sharp and angry, but Misty couldn't understand. She felt the unease grow as the tension in the house thickened, and her hopes of a loving home began to fade. Days turned into weeks, and Misty started to notice the couple's true nature. The man was distant, often lost in his phone or watching TV, while the woman's demeanor had grown cold. She'd scold Misty for the smallest things, never offering warmth or affection. One day Misty was caught playing with the curtains, her tiny paws batting at the fabric as she tried to climb. The woman's voice rang out, sharp and filled with irritation. "Stop it, you little nuisance," she snapped, rushing over to yank Misty away from the curtain. The harsh grip made Misty freeze in fear, her body trembling. From that moment on, the warm, safe feeling she once had was replaced with a growing sense of dread. Misty began to hide under furniture, too scared to show herself, unsure of what she'd face next. As the days wore on, Misty felt more and more alienated in her new home. The couple's behavior grew more erratic. They didn't just ignore her, they actively pushed her away. She was no longer allowed to roam freely inside the house. The door to her room was closed at all times, and when they did let her out, she was kept in a cage, separated from the rest of the house. One night, the woman came into the room, holding something, a collar with a leash attached. "It's time you learned your place," she muttered, her voice cold. Misty was too frightened to resist. The leash was placed around her neck, and she was forced to walk behind the woman like a servant. The woman's footsteps were heavy and commanding, and Misty stumbled, struggling to keep up. She longed for the freedom she had once known, but now it seemed impossible to escape. One evening, as the couple argued loudly downstairs, Misty found herself alone in her cage, her tiny heart racing. The noise downstairs was unsettling, the raised voices making her feel trapped, unable to escape. In the silence that followed, she heard the unmistakable sound of the front door opening. Without thinking, Misty bolted from her cage, her instincts kicking in. She raced through the hallway, avoiding the stairs and the noise. She reached the door, pushing it open with her paws. The cool night air greeted her, and she dashed outside into the darkness. She didn't know where she was going, but it didn't matter. Misty was free, even if for just a moment. As she ran down the street, she realized that she had escaped, but the freedom felt bittersweet. The world outside was just as cruel, and her future remained uncertain. After running from the house, Misty wandered through the streets, the cool night air biting at her fur. She wasn't sure where she was headed, but the fear from her previous home still lingered in her mind. She stumbled down the street, exhausted and uncertain, when suddenly she felt a warm touch on her back. Startled, she spun around, her heart racing, but it wasn't a threat. It was a kind face, an older man in his 60s, wearing a thick jacket and a soft smile. He knelt down slowly, extending his hand towards her. "Hey there, little one," he murmured gently. Misty eyed him warily, unsure if she could trust another stranger. But the man's eyes were soft, filled with understanding. Slowly, she took a tentative step forward. "It's okay," the man said softly, his voice soothing. "You're safe now." The warmth in his voice melted Misty's fears just enough for her to take a chance. She allowed him to pet her gently, her body relaxing at the touch. The man, Henry, gently picked Misty up, cradling her in his arms. "You're lucky I found you," he muttered, looking down at the trembling kitten. As he walked, he explained that he worked at a local animal shelter, taking care of injured and abandoned animals. Misty listened intently, feeling the safety in his voice. Despite her initial fears, she felt warmth radiating from his arms, and her body began to relax. After a few moments, he stopped in front of a cozy building with a sign that read, "The Haven Animal Shelter." Misty perked up, intrigued by the promise of a new place, one that seemed like it could offer her safety and care. Henry smiled down at her. "You'll be okay here," he reassured. With a soft chuckle, he added, "We've got plenty of room for you." Misty, still a bit unsure, couldn't deny the comfort of being cared for again. Upon entering the shelter, Misty felt a new wave of safety. The building smelled of fresh wood, clean bedding, and the faint scent of animals. There were cages, but they were spacious, and the sounds were gentle, unlike the harsh noises from her previous home. Henry carefully placed her in one of the cages, lining it with soft bedding. "You're going to like it here," he said, closing the door gently. As he walked away, Misty surveyed the shelter. There were other animals, some playful, others resting. A group of dogs in one corner wagged their tails as she walked by. Misty hesitated, watching them, unsure if she was ready to trust yet another group of strangers. But there was no fear here, only calm. She slowly sat down in the corner of her new space, her body still sore, but for the first time in a long while, she felt hope. As the days passed, Misty began to adapt to the rhythm of the shelter. She was fed regularly, given clean bedding, and allowed some time out of her cage to explore. The other animals were kind, and she slowly began to feel more comfortable. One morning, Henry introduced her to another cat, a much older female named Luna, who had been at the shelter for years. Luna was calm and wise, with soft gray fur and gentle eyes. She immediately took a liking to Misty, and the two cats began to share their time together. Luna showed Misty around the shelter, teaching her the safe spaces and how to interact with the other animals. Misty felt a sense of belonging for the first time in so long, finding companionship in Luna and the other animals who had suffered in silence, just like her. As the weeks went by, Misty grew stronger, and her trust in Henry and the shelter deepened. She became more playful, exploring every nook and cranny of the shelter. Henry would often visit her, offering treats and kind words, always checking in on her progress. Misty had found not just a safe space, but a family of sorts. The shelter had become her home, and she knew she would never have to face the cold, cruel streets again. One evening, Henry sat down beside her cage, speaking softly as he stroked her fur. "I'm proud of you, Misty," he said with a smile. Misty looked up at him, her eyes filled with gratitude. She had found kindness once more, and with it, the strength to heal. It had been a few weeks since Misty had settled into the shelter. She had grown more playful and confident with each passing day, finding comfort in the warmth and routine of her new life. But one afternoon, Henry seemed unusually quiet as he walked into the shelter. He was carrying a piece of mail, a letter that had come addressed to Misty. Henry sat down on the floor, opening the envelope carefully. The letter was from Misty's original family. Misty had never known what happened to them, but now she would find out. Henry read the letter aloud, his voice steady but tinged with disbelief. "We never meant to abandon you, Misty," the letter began. It turned out that the couple who had adopted her had misunderstood the situation and, in their panic, had given her away. Misty's original family had been devastated, but they believed her to be lost. The letter went on to explain that they had been searching for her ever since. It was a twist of fate. The family wanted to be reunited with her. As Henry finished reading, he looked at Misty, who was curled up on her bed, oblivious to the storm that was about to hit her world. The weight of the letter hung in the air. Henry sat still for a moment, contemplating the implications of the message. Misty had a family that was searching for her, but was that really what she wanted? Her life at the shelter was peaceful, filled with love from Henry and the other animals. The possibility of being reunited with her original family was both comforting and unsettling. Misty's new life was safe, but the past still lingered, haunting her like a shadow she couldn't outrun. Henry took a deep breath, knowing this would be a difficult decision. He gently placed the letter in front of Misty, allowing her to sniff it, though she didn't seem to recognize it. "What do you think, girl?" he muttered, unsure if Misty even understood the gravity of the situation. He knew that she was happier here, but could he make that choice for her? He couldn't keep her from a family that wanted her back. Yet, the bond they had formed was undeniable. The next day, Henry received a call. It was from the family who had sent the letter. They wanted to meet Misty. They were eager to take her back, but Henry wasn't sure how to explain that Misty had found a home, one where she was safe and loved. The family, despite their genuine care, had never really understood the depth of Misty's trauma. They thought they could simply reclaim her, but things had changed. Misty was no longer the scared kitten they had abandoned. She was stronger, more confident, and she had formed a bond with Henry and the shelter. Henry paced the shelter's office, running his hand through his graying hair. He knew this wasn't an easy decision. Misty was part of the shelter now, But did he have the right to deny her the chance to reunite with her family? The phone call left him with a sense of unease. He looked over at Misty, who was playing with one of the shelter's toys. She had come so far, but could he truly take that from her? The family arrived the following weekend. Henry opened the door to see a couple standing nervously in front of him, their eyes filled with hope and regret. They were eager to meet Misty, to see if she would remember them. Misty was hesitant at first when the couple approached, her body tense as she looked between Henry and them. The man reached out, but Misty backed away, still unsure. The woman knelt down, calling softly, "Misty, it's us, your family." But Misty didn't respond. Henry observed from the side, a quiet sadness in his eyes. This wasn't the reunion he had expected. The couple's eyes flickered with disappointment, but they understood. Misty wasn't the same kitten they had lost, and they couldn't just take her back like nothing had changed. After a long pause, the couple stood up, their shoulders heavy with the realization that they had lost her for good. "We'll leave her here," the man said softly. "This is where she belongs now." As the family left, Misty remained at the shelter, her place now clear. She had a new home, one that had chosen her, not because they had to, but because they truly wanted her. The couple's departure was bittersweet, but Henry knew he had done the right thing. Misty had grown, and though the bond with her original family was important, the shelter had given her the chance to heal. Henry smiled softly as he watched her play with a ball, her movements fluid and carefree. The shelter had become her true home, a place of love, safety, and belonging. Misty looked up at Henry, her eyes filled with trust, and for the first time she seemed at peace. The past was behind her, and her future was bright. It was a cold morning when Henry received the news. The shelter was in danger of being shut down due to lack of funding. The community had stopped supporting them, and without help, they couldn't keep the doors open. Henry felt the weight of the world on his shoulders. The thought of losing Misty and all the other animals tore at him. But he couldn't give up, not now. He gathered the staff and began brainstorming ways to save the shelter. The animals needed them, and he wouldn't let them down. The pressure mounted with each passing hour, but Henry kept pushing forward. Misty, now more confident, could sense the change. She stayed close to him, offering comfort in her own silent way. As Henry organized a fundraiser, Misty watched him tirelessly work, her small presence a steadying force. She knew she had found a home, and she would do anything to help Henry save it. With her new courage, Misty began interacting with the shelter's visitors, sharing her story, her hope. The fundraiser night arrived, and the shelter's future hung in the balance. Henry welcomed donors and volunteers into the shelter, his face brightening as people arrived, each showing support for the animals. Misty ran between the visitors, rubbing against their legs, purring contentedly. She had become the face of the shelter, symbolizing everything they were fighting for. The atmosphere was filled with warmth and determination, as people came together to save a place that had given so many animals a second chance at life. As the night wore on, the donations began to roll in, and hope surged through Henry's heart. By the end of the evening, they had raised enough funds to keep the shelter running for another year. Henry could hardly believe it, the shelter was saved. As he looked down at Misty, who had fallen asleep at his feet, he realized that this place was more than just a refuge. It was a family, and it was worth fighting for. The future was uncertain, but for now, they had a chance. The relief of the night's success gave Henry a moment to breathe, but there was still work to be done. As the shelter's doors remained open, Misty became an ambassador for the other animals, drawing visitors in with her playful spirit. But in her heart, she knew that this place, this shelter, was her true home. Henry had given her a chance at life, and now, together, they had given the shelter a chance at survival. Misty's journey had come full circle. She had found love, found family, and now she was part of something much bigger. The shelter was thriving once again, and Misty had found her forever home. Henry often sat by her side, watching as she played with the other animals. But there was something even deeper, a bond that had grown between them over the months. Misty had become the heart of the shelter, bringing joy and hope to everyone she met. As she looked up at Henry, she knew she was safe, loved, and exactly where she was meant to be. Together they had created a family of their own, a place of warmth, care, and endless possibilities. One afternoon, Henry sat in the shelter's main room, writing in a journal, reflecting on how far they had come. Misty jumped onto the chair beside him, curling up next to him, as if sensing his need for quiet company. He stroked her fur gently, feeling the soft rhythm of her purring. "You've come a long way, little one," he murmured. "And so have I." They had both been through so much, but now they had found peace. The shelter had become a sanctuary for both the animals and the people who cared for them. The shelter had become a place of refuge, not only for the animals but for the people who came through its doors. Visitors came in to meet the animals, and many left with a sense of hope and connection. Misty had become a symbol of survival, a reminder that even after the darkest moments, love could still be found. She and Henry stood by the entrance, greeting a new group of visitors. Misty meowed happily, rubbing against their legs, as if welcoming them into her world. She had truly found her place. As the months passed, the bond between Misty and Henry grew even stronger. They had become inseparable, a true family. Misty followed him around the shelter, always at his side, and whenever he felt down, she was there to offer comfort with her soft purr. Henry realized that this was his purpose, to care for animals like Misty, and to help them find their way to love and safety. He had found a new sense of fulfillment, knowing that he was making a difference in the world, one animal at a time. In the final moments, Misty and Henry stood together in front of the shelter, watching the sunset. The sky was painted with shades of orange and pink, a reflection of the journey they had taken together. Misty's eyes were calm, her body relaxed, and she looked up at Henry, knowing that no matter what happened, she was loved. Henry bent down to pet her one last time, his heart full of gratitude. "We made it," he whispered. They had survived, together. And they would continue to thrive, no matter what the future held.